Charles Bronson was never a man of compromise. On screen, he was the stone-faced antihero whose silence carried more weight than a dozen speeches. Off-screen, he was just as direct. Bronson had no patience for Hollywood politics, inflated egos, or actors he thought were phony. If someone crossed him, he didn't shrug it off. He kept score. In this story, we'll look at 7 actors Bronson reportedly couldn't stomach. These grudges weren't fleeting. They came from bruised pride, clashing styles, and rivalries that never quite healed. Let's get into it. 1. James Garner. Bronson's straightforward nature collided head-on with James Garner during the filming of The Great Escape in 1963. In his memoir, The Garner Files, Garner recalled Bronson as a pain in the ass, bitter, belligerent. He used and abused people, and I didn't like it. Their tension came to a head during a poker game. Bronson tried to retract a bet against a young extra. Garner insisted he pay up, probably no more than $50, but for that kid, it was a fortune. Bronson, embarrassed, stormed out and vowed never to work with Garner again. The two never reconciled. Garner later admitted, "I think Charlie held a grudge. I know I did." Both men carried that bitterness for life. 2. Lee Marvin. By the mid-1960s, Lee Marvin was as famous for his heavy drinking as for his acting. Bronson, disciplined to the core, despised it. On the set of The Dirty Dozen, 1967, Marvin's drunken behavior forced retakes and wasted hours. Bronson finally snapped, telling him, "You're not the only tough guy here, Lee. You waste everyone's time when you can't stand up straight." While Marvin laughed it off publicly, Bronson never forgave what he saw as disrespect. Their paths crossed again in Death Hunt, 1981, but the two men kept their distance. To Bronson, Marvin's tough guy act was just that, an act. 3. James Coburn. Bronson believed acting was about discipline and truth. James Coburn, with his easy charm and big Hollywood grin, represented everything Bronson distrusted. They first worked together in The Magnificent Seven, 1960. On screen, they balanced each other well. Off-screen, Bronson dismissed Coburn's charm as empty showmanship. By the time they reunited for Hard Times, 1975, the rivalry was obvious. Coburn reportedly joked, "Lighten up, Charlie. This is a movie, not a funeral." Bronson fired back, "Some of us are here to act. Some are here to act up." When Coburn passed in 2002, just a year before Bronson, there were no warm words, only silence. For John Wayne, if Bronson embodied grit, John Wayne embodied myth. Bronson never hid his disdain. "He was playing cowboys while I was shoveling coal." Wayne, for his part, mocked the new generation of stoic tough guys like Bronson and Clint Eastwood. "Standing around and squinting isn't acting," he once sneered. Their clash wasn't about roles, but philosophy. Wayne saw himself as the heroic cowboy. Bronson saw himself as the reality of working-class toughness. They never reconciled, and when Wayne died in 1979, Bronson remained silent. 5. Steve McQueen. Bronson and Steve McQueen worked together on both The Magnificent Seven and The Great Escape. McQueen was notorious for scene-stealing tricks, adjusting his hat, fiddling with props, anything to draw the eye. Bronson hated it. "Oh, Steve acts with his hat," he once muttered. "I act with my face." Bronson saw McQueen's charisma as gimmick. McQueen saw Bronson as too intense when saying, "Lighten up, Charlie. It's only a movie." Their rivalry was professional, not explosive, but the chill between them was unmistakable. When McQueen died in 1980, Bronson summed it up in one cold line. He wanted to be the star. "I just wanted to work." 6. Alan. 1968. Bronson starred opposite French icon Alain Dion in Adieu le May Farewell Friend. On-screen their chemistry was electric. Off-screen it was anything but. Bronson loathed Don's vanity, his tailored suits, his punctuality problems, his entourage. "He spends more time in front of the mirror than in front of the camera." Bronson once said. Don shot back years later, "Charles was a great actor, but he hated stars, and I was a star." The two never worked together again. To Bronson, Dylan was the perfect example of style over substance. To Don, Bronson was a man too raw for his own good. 7. Tony Curtis. Perhaps the most surprising name on Bronson's blacklist was Tony Curtis. During The Great Escape, Bronson dismissed Curtis as a Hollywood prince, someone who performed more for the press than for the camera. Tony acted for the press. "I acted for the camera." Bronson once said. Curtis didn't stay silent either. He later quipped, "Charlie was a hell of an actor, but he thought seriousness was the same as depth." Their dislike never became tabloid fodder, but it never softened either. Bronson carried his disdain to his death in 2003. Curtis, until his own passing in 2010, brushed him off as humorless. Charles Bronson lived and worked by a strict code: authenticity over vanity, grit over glamour. To him, acting wasn't about charm or publicity. It was about discipline, silence, and truth. That's why his grudges were so revealing. They weren't just personal vendettas. They were reflections of his values. So, what do you think? Were Bronson's rivalries justified, or was he simply too uncompromising for Hollywood spotlight?